Halfland, an ahistorical prehistory. The Battle of Greengrange. In the 160th year of the Common Reckoning, Eldaron Broadleaf assembled an army of mail-clad elves and marched against Bear's End. The Lord of Bear's End was Oswin. He mustered his men at the farmstead of Greengrange, in the path of the advancing elves. Oswin's force numbered some 750. There were 300 spearmen, all with shields. Half of these wore mail, and half did not. There were 300 unarmoured light infantry, all with swords and shields, some of whom also carried javelins, while the remainder were equipped with slings. Finally, he had around 150 unarmoured archers. Oswin arrayed his spearmen in front of the farm in 2 blocks in the centre of his line, the armoured spearmen on his left and the unarmoured to the right. Out on his left flank he stationed his light infantry. On his right flank were the archers. The Bear's Enders were eager to fight. They stood in their ranks, scanning the forest before them for any sight of their foes. Above the treetops, many columns of smoke rose into the sky. Each came from a farm which the elves had burned. Eldaron's army was of a similar size to that of Oswin. Unlike the Bear's Enders, all of the elves wore mail. The 300 elves of Eldaron's guard carried shields and swords. They were accompanied by 450 archers, equipped with the fearsome elven longbow. The elves marched through the wood in 5 columns. On the far left was a column of 150 archers. Next to them were 150 of the guard, led by Eldaron in person. The central column consisted of 150 archers. To their right were the other 150 of the guard, with the column on the far right consisting of the remaining 150 archers. Oswin was concerned that the elven archers could subject his troops to a lethal arrow storm, while staying out of range of the bows, slings, and javelins of the Bear's Enders. As soon as he observed the elves advancing through the trees, he ordered his archers and light infantry forward to close the distance as quickly as possible. On Oswin's right, the archers moved forward. On his left, there was confusion. Half the light infantry advanced, moving up to the eaves of the forest, seeking cover from the elven longbows, but the remainder failed to do so. There was no confusion or hesitation among the elven columns, threading their way surely and silently through the forest, bearing down on the Bear's Enders. The column of guard on the elven right emerged from the trees, drew their swords, and headed across the meadows toward the farm. The column of archers to their right halted at the forest edge and redeployed into line, reaching for the arrows in their quivers. There was a pause, and then a cloud of arrows hissed across the meadows, tearing great rents in the ranks of the already disorganized light infantry standing in the open. Observing the fate of those they had left behind, the forward group of light infantry pushed further into the forest, which provided some protection from elven arrows. Seeing this, the column of elven guard that had been advancing across the meadow turned to its right, seeking to come to blows with the light infantry cowering in the trees. On the other side of the battlefield, the column of elven guard led by Eldaron was swiftly advancing toward the Bear's Ender archers, who had formed into line. The archers loosed a volley of arrows at the advancing elves, but with no noticeable effect. As both columns of elven guard advanced menacingly, the elven archers once again worked their bowstrings, this time targeting the ranks of Oswin's armoured spearmen. The elven arrows hit hard, piercing shields and mail coats, inflicting injury and death. But the spearmen stood their ground. Unlike the elven guard, the Bear's Ender light infantry had emerged into the open, forming up to meet the guard's onslaught, and greeted the elven swordsmen advancing on them with a hail of javelins and slingshot. The elves had not expected to meet such determined resistance. As their casualties began to mount, the elven formation broke. On the other flank, Eldaron had led his column of elven guard unscathed through volley after volley of inaccurate and ineffective archery. The elves were now only a few yards from the Bear's Ender bowmen, who drew and loosed their bows one last time. And now the elves discovered that the archery they had contemptuously considered toothless was, at this close range, accurate and powerful enough to have considerable bite. As the elves in the front rank began to fall, those behind faltered. Eldaron urged them on, but even as he did so, an arrow passed over the rim of his shield and embedded itself in his face. The wound was not fatal, but the sight of their leader staggering backward, hands clutched to his head, his blood flowing copiously between his fingers, broke the resolve of those around him. And so, for the second time that day, a column of elven guard broke and ran. With Eldaron incapacitated, the aggressive spirit of the elven army ebbed away. They did not flee in panic. They were too proud for that. Both columns of elven guard rallied and reformed, but they did not return to the attack. Instead, they withdrew in good order, taking the injured Eldaron with them. Their retreat was protected by the elven archers, who directed a few final arrows at the Bear's Ender spearmen, with the aim of deterring any pursuit, and then followed their fellows back into the forest. Thus did Oswin win a famous victory, and thus ended the Battle of Greengrange.